Good morning, everyone. My name is Ellen Honigstock. I'm the Senior Director of Education at Urban Green, and we're so happy to partner with USGBC on this event, and thank you so much to the 32BJ Training Fund for hosting us. I really feel like I'm among my people here. Our shared values are excellence, inclusion, collaboration, and engagement, and we invite you to be mindful of these during the entire program. So first, I'd like to welcome up our CEO, John Mandyck, to get us started.
Thank you, Ellen. Welcome, everybody. It's great to see all of you here. I mean, how more authentic could we be to talk about workforce development issues when it comes to decarbonization when we're in a carpentry lab? So if you don't pay attention, we're going to give you a hammer and we're going to finish these houses. But it's really super to see you here. This is a really important topic that we need to keep front and center. Workforce development when it comes to decarbonization and where we need to go on that agenda is so critical, and often it's overlooked. The policy design mechanisms look at the big picture issue, but actually if we don't have the people to do it, the policies won't be successful. And so our salute goes to 32BJ and the 32BJ Training Fund for all that they do, and you're going to hear about that today. So I want to thank Manny as our host and 32BJ in the Training Fund. They do such great work, participate on our board. I want to thank Con Edison, who is a sponsor for today's event. And before I introduce our next speaker, I'm really excited that we're going to be showing you some research today from my colleague Adam that's going to point to the need and the opportunity for the discussion that we're going to have today. So we're excited to share that with you today too. So finally, I want to thank our event partner, which is the U.S. Green Building Council. USGBC has been a global leader in leading the green building movement, which we appreciate, and a longtime supporter and partner with Urban Green, and increasingly so this year, which we're very, very grateful for. Peter Templeton is the president and CEO. I've been working with Peter for the better part of 2 decades already, Peter. And it's been a pleasure, and he's been a great partner. So please welcome Peter Templeton.
Good morning. It is great to be here with all of you, and thank you, John, and thank you, Manny. Thank you, 32BJ, for hosting us on today's event. We're really excited to be part of it with all of you. This actually, I was telling John, brings me back. My godfather set up one of the carpenters training programs back in Las Vegas a decade or so ago, and this reminds me a lot of some of the facilities that he was working on back then. So it makes me feel like I'm back with family. So we are really excited to be here. We want to congratulate the work that John and his team have done on their report that you'll hear more about throughout the day. But it is critically important for all of us, to be focused on the continued opportunities for leadership that are presented within our community, and Urban Green and 32BJ and the partnership that they've had now for many years really exemplifies what we need to be seeing happening around the country. So we're thrilled to be able to highlight some of the specific areas for action that are called out in the report that John has created. This is really important for us in the work that we do in trying to drive a mission of green building for all in all communities around the globe. And we need to be able to point to real examples of how this happens and how we make connections between the folks that are doing this hard work and the outcomes that we're trying to achieve in all of our communities. So, as we all know, continuing to develop a workforce capable of retrofitting and operating low carbon buildings at scale is a prerequisite for achieving those community goals, like Local Law 97 here in New York, and of course the Paris targets globally. We want to continue to hone in on where those opportunities exist, and this is like what we see in the report that Urban Green has presented, really to focus on how it is that we can grow and train workforce at all job levels across a multitude of job categories, including folks that are going to be working as boiler technicians, electricians, steel fabricators, plumbers, and the thousands of critical property professionals represented by 32BJ. All of this is an essential part of the chain to deliver on these expectations that we're setting. We know that this work is urgently important. Right here in New York, we've seen over $20 billion catastrophic climate-related events in the past 3 years. We want to make sure that we are doing what we can to mitigate what those are going to be, and certainly prepare ourselves for the adverse impacts of climate change around the globe. The good news is that we're not just building this workforce from scratch. We're building off a strong base that all of you here represent, and the work that you and your colleagues and your peers across the country and around the world are doing, things that we need to accelerate and grow. But we're starting just here in New York from over 60,000 energy professionals that are working in buildings and properties across the community. And we don't want to take any of that for granted. We need every one of them and more. And that's where we have these cycles of learning that can occur on the job and in the classroom so that we can bring more folks into that fold effectively. One of the exciting things that we've seen, of course, is the growth in this area, that nearly 4% growth between 2021 and 2022 in jobs in this sector, but especially seeing new groups coming into this. The same report from the Department of Energy shows that the number of women working in energy increased 7% during that same period, and that union employers are offering more workforce diversity and inclusivity programming than non-union employers. And that's critically important to ensure that there are career pathways available for everyone and that no talent is left untapped when we need it most in this space. So I also want to applaud all of you for the work that you're doing to bring new folks into these career paths and the opportunities that they represent for all of us in this critical time. So USGBC is, of course, committed to building on this progress as well and strengthening industry capacity to design, build, and operate buildings that decarbonize our economy and improve the health, resilience, and equity of our communities around the globe. Over the past year, we have delivered more than 200,000 hours of education with more than 25,000 people completing education sessions in our course catalog. That includes over 30,000 individuals that either earned some of our credentials or have renewed their credentials during that same period, a critical milestone of folks that are using this as a ladder for professional development themselves. And we're tremendously proud of our work in that area. But we know that there is much more room for partnership in working with folks like everyone represented here to expand that network. We're also doing more to promote and protect workers in LEED, our green building rating system. At Greenbuild this year, we released the draft framework for LEED version 5 for operations and maintenance of buildings. This is the first rating system that we've released under the new update of that rating system. We've decided to release our operations and maintenance system ahead of our building design and construction work because of the critical role that existing buildings are going to play in achieving our decarbonization goals for our communities and for the planet, and recognizing that they also constitute the long-term investment that we're making in properties around the globe. V5 will include new credits focused on facilities and maintenance staff that promote local employment, livable wages, and job training, that protect occupants and building staff who are vulnerable to extreme heat, to poor air quality, and other health issues, and that enhance the safety of workplace environments beyond OSHA's standards. So these are all critical priorities for our next version of our leadership standard in this space, and wanting to use that to set expectations, again, in the communities that we're working around the globe. So I'd like to thank all of the members of our community that have been working to develop these standards and inform these standards and help us identify what really is best practice, what is leadership in this space, which includes practitioners around the globe that are working in these jobs and understanding where there's opportunities for us to do better and pathways that we can lay for others to follow that lead. So I thank all of you. In closing, I'm thrilled to be participating in this event today. I look forward to learning how we can continue to strengthen the building decarbonization workforce and support the success of your ambitious, inspiring, and critical work here in New York City. So thank you all.
Peter, thank you so much for those inspiring words. That was amazing. Thank you. Next, we're going to have a very interesting presentation. I'm proud to introduce Adam Schiabor, our Urban Greens research manager, and he's going to present what we're calling it Local Law 97 in Focus. The first portion of this research came out in May, and the second portion came out last week. And it focuses on Local Law 97 and how it applies to the multifamily sector. So, Adam.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. So my name is Adam Schiabor. I'm the manager of research at Urban Green Council, and today I'm going to be presenting our Local Law 97 in Focus research, which Ellen mentioned. First part came out in May, which looked at the multifamily sector in general, and then the second part, which I'm going to be mostly presenting today, is looking at low-rise pre-war buildings. So a lot of the buildings that people live in, older buildings that need upgrades for Local Law 97. So just a primer on Local Law 97. So it's New York City's buildings emissions law. It puts carbon caps, annual carbon caps on the largest buildings in the city, so buildings over 25,000 square feet. And the limits start next year in 2024, and they tighten over time all the way to 2050, which we're hoping that we can reach net zero by 2050. As you can see here, most of the buildings covered by Local 97 are residential buildings, and then about 2/3, a little over 2/3, and then the rest are non-residential, so commercial, office, hotels, those type of buildings. So in 2019, when the law passed, we did a high-level analysis that looked at the potential retrofit market that could come from this law. And we had to make a lot of assumptions at the time because the rules weren't out, and we made the assumption that if all buildings complied via energy efficiency upgrades, that this could lead to $2.2 billion in investment from 2020 to 2024, and then $18.2 billion between 2024 and 2030, leading to possibly 141,000 jobs created from that investment. Now, this is a high-level market possibility study, but I think what's really interesting to focus on here is just this ramp up, right? From 2024 to 2030, we need to grow the retrofit market substantially if we're going to meet our goals. And we can't wait until 2029 to do $18 billion of retrofit work, right? We have to start now, and we have to ramp up the workforce so that we can meet our goals. So now jumping to 2023, we decided, okay, now the rules are out for Local 97, most of them at least, and so we can really focus on specific sectors and looking at what those sectors need to do to comply with the law. So we chose the multifamily sector and specifically the pre-war low-rise steam-heated buildings, so radiators, everyone kind of knows them, no insulation, usually walk-ups, looking at those buildings, because those are actually the most common building that has to comply with Local 97. A lot of the press and a lot of stories are about big, tall buildings, commercial buildings, new buildings, but actually the most common building is your common residential building. So we wanted to ask these two questions, which were, how much work do the most common multifamily buildings need to do to comply with Local 97 in 2030? And we chose 2030 because that's when really the rubber hits the road. It's when these caps get stricter and most buildings actually have to do work to comply with the law. Right now, I think almost 90% of buildings comply in 2024 already. So 2030 is really what we're focusing on. And what type of work will this be, and who are the workers that are going to do it? So our main findings is there are 5,500 pre-war low-rise properties in New York City that have to comply with Local 97, and we forecast 25,000 individual retrofit projects that need to happen. So retrofit project can mean anything from installing sensors and temperature gauges in energy management system to control your boiler better, to do steam system optimization, install vents, insulate pipes, traditional energy efficiency like air sealing or roof insulation, or more future-proofing system changes like domestic hot water electrification or space heating electrification. So runs the gamut from kind of the stuff that's been happening to kind of the new things that need to happen. And those 25,000 retrofit projects represent $300 million of investment. And if we complete those by 2030, just for these 5,500 buildings, that will save 270 tons of carbon per year. And that's the equivalent of taking 60,000 gas-powered cars off the road every year. So significant carbon savings, significant work, significant investment. And I just want to shout out to our partners at Cadence 15. They're a New York City-based startup that's really trying to drive data and multifamily building decarbonization. They helped us with this analysis. So this is a little complicated, and it's on the website. So I really encourage everyone to go to the website because it's interactive. But I just wanted to show you, so right here, if you look at the middle bars, right, we've mapped out all 25,000 projects, and we've bucketed them into three categories, which are heating system improvements, other efficiency projects, and electrification and fuel switching. So as you can see, the vast majority of these projects will be in heating system improvements, improving steam systems, and other efficiency projects, so air sealing, common area lighting upgrades, and installing low-flow fixtures, stuff like that. Whereas a minority of the projects will actually be in electrification, so and primarily domestic hot water electrification we see playing a larger role than space heating electrification for 2030. So this is if you look at it by project, but if you look at those same 25,000 projects by investment, you see electrification and fuel switching becoming a lot more apparent. So, and this is because these cost a lot more, right? They're bigger projects. They involve more workers, and they involve more capital investment. But also, these projects set you so that you're going to be able to comply with the law all the way to 2050, right? In a lot of cases, or get you on the path at least to complying in 2050. So, as you can see, I think we have less than 500 actual electrification projects, but they're taking up over half of that $300 million in investment. So it's interesting to kind of go back and forth, and the graphic on the website's interactive, so you can do that. So what are the key takeaways? I think number one is there's a large and growing market for making improvements to current building systems, right? I think we hear a lot about totally changing systems, all this, but there's actually a lot we can do with our current building systems, and this is real carbon savings, right? So we need to make sure that we're doing the most work with what we have and getting the savings from what we have. And connected to that, this is a massive opportunity to bring New Yorkers into the green construction workforce, right? Going back to that graph that showed the ramp up needed for 2030, we need more people to do this work, and this is a great opportunity to get people in buildings, get them familiar with systems, making these improvements. And then kind of a different takeaway, but one thing that we're really seeing in the market is if a building is going to choose electrification, they're more likely to choose domestic hot water electrification instead of space heating electrification. This has to do with cost considerations, but then also resident. A lot of these domestic hot water systems are central, right? So you don't have to access as many tenant spaces, which makes things easier, cheaper, and so we see people choosing that over space heating, at least to start. And then I just wanted to also highlight some longer-term electrification drivers that are currently in the market right now. So the first one is the beneficial electrification credit, which was part of the new Local 97 proposed rules that came out 2 months ago and will likely be finalized at the end of this year. So this is basically if a building chooses to take on an electrification project, either hot water or space heating, they're going to be given a credit for a carbon credit that they can use for compliance with Local 97 going forward, right, in 2030. And it's only given to them if they do it in the next 3 to 5 years, right? So it's really trying to reward early adoption of electrification, but it's really helping a lot of these projects pencil out to do electrification now and then get that critical market experience and workforce experience for these projects in New York City. The second driver is NYSERDA's Empire Buildings Challenge, which has been in the market for 3 or 4 years now. It has, I think, 16 of the largest real estate partners in New York City have committed to decarbonize over 125 million square feet of their commercial and residential space. So these are tall, big buildings that kind of everyone knows about New York City, and they're coming up with workforce solutions and retrofit solutions, particularly electrification solutions for these buildings, and sharing out the results through multiple channels. So really exciting that these electrification drivers are in the market to get this going. So thank you very much. As I mentioned, the report is online. We also have 3 case studies that kind of map out who does this work, the trades involved, the time it might take, the investment it might take for specific building case studies. So I definitely encourage everyone to check out the new analysis on our website. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Adam. We appreciate that. We're going to do something special right now. We're going to have a fireside chat with Manny Pastreich. Manny, come on out. Manny is the president of 32BJ SEIU, representing 175,000 members. And so we're really thrilled that we're here in your house. We're in Manny's house today. And just really thrilled for the work that you do. So thanks for joining us, Manny. Really appreciate it. Maybe we could just start out with some grounding for our new guests in the audience here and online. Can you tell us the type of job categories your union covers?
Yeah, So again, welcome everyone. We're really glad to have you here. This is an important part of what we do and our benefit fund does. And on behalf of Linda Nelson, who directs our benefit fund, and the employers who are part of it, we're really glad to have everyone. But so we have 175,000 members up and down the East Coast. Here in New York City, we represent about 90,000 people who work in New York City. The biggest chunk work in residential buildings. And in our residential buildings, you really go from a porter, which is like a cleaner, all the way up to a resident manager, a superintendent who's running the building and making all the decisions and the maintenance and everything in between. We actually have a number of people from NYU here where we have, again, we have folks both on the classroom side and the building side as well as on the residential side. And then we have about 20,000 members who work in commercial office buildings as cleaners. We have a few thousand who work in airports, and we also have security officers in lobbies. So that's the gamut of what we have.
Great. So that's great background for the discussion we'll have today. So tell us, how is the role of these workers, particularly in the building service part, how has that evolved in the last 10 or 15 years? What are they doing differently now that they weren't doing before?
Yeah. That's a good question. I mean, New York has been leading the charge, I would say, in terms of climate change and addressing climate change. So there's just been a host of policy and legislative action here in New York City, which Urban Green has been at the center of so much of that. And that really has led to a change for our members. And it varies, again, by the sectors that they're in. In our commercial sector, I would say it's somewhat really focused on recycling and green cleaning. But again, in the residential sector where we have our members doing everything from sort of, again, entry level to running the buildings, the list is incredibly long. I mean, from really managing the electrification. The other thing I'd focus on is really being the front line with the tenants. Tenants often have an incredible amount of questions about what's going on, why it's going on, and our members are the ones who they come to on the front lines. And so it's been incredibly important for the buildings, for our members to become educated on what's going on, why it's important, and being able to answer those questions. But from electrification to green roofs to, it's an incredibly long list of what our members have been doing and doing differently. And I would also say enjoying. It's actually been given a lot more satisfaction to our members to be part of the changes in the buildings and, the importance to the building and important to the broader community.
And so, given that, why is decarbonization important to your members?
That's a big question. I think I'm going to start really big and come in. When 32BJ was founded by immigrants, we're still a vast majority of our members are immigrants, and people leave their countries because of economic instability, political instability, and more so environmental instability, and a combination of those things. So that's just as a starting point of how our members got to this country, or so many of them did. But at this point, when you come into New York, and I think Peter used the number of the $20 billion of climate, cost, and there's more than just the costs in New York alone. Our members are the front lines in addressing the changes that need to happen to prepare for that, and then when the climate disasters happen. But really, on a day-to-day level, as I was sort of saying before, our members really take great care in their buildings and their tenants. And so being part of the change of those buildings is actually, I think, given for the ones that have been able to put their hands on it, incredibly satisfying and important to them. And then, again, there's been the skills that they've needed to obtain to get there.
So that's why it's important to them, but how is it affecting them? How's it affecting their jobs when they go to work?
Yeah. So again, it varies by industry. I mean, I think in the commercial industry, our cleaners are spending a lot more time on recycling and all those kinds of things that they ever did before. In the residential area, I think, again, you're focused, you can look at putting in new stoves, electric stoves, retrofitting. I think on the list that was just presented, particularly sort of once you get out of the complete system changes, which our members don't do, but the things that happen within the buildings, whether that's the air filters, the lighting, the stoves, we've calculated that you could save 15 to 20% in energy costs just for the things that our members touch within the buildings. And that's a huge starting point. And so, those kind of things that our members can touch and do within the buildings can make a big difference.
And so let's switch just a little bit. Let's talk about the obstacles out there. So what are the obstacles that we have to overcome from where you stand and from where your workers stand?
Well, I think you have a lot to add to this too, because Urban Green has been such a thoughtful partner, I think, in the issues of like where is the best spot for us to make progress on climate change, but deal with the real obstacles. And I think the obstacles that our members see in the buildings are the same that we probably see in the broader community. What are the things that we can afford to do? Cost is an issue. I mean, making these changes is a real issue, and each building has to make a decision of what to invest in the short term versus the long term to ensure that we're ready to address the climate change and to comply with all these laws coming down the pike. We're talking about 2030. What am I going to do in 2023? What am I going to do in 2024 and 25 so that I'm not caught too late by 2030? So I think cost is an issue. The other one is, we are really proud of the training fund that we are building the skills so our members can actually participate in making the changes, being part of that process. So I think ensuring that we have the skills for the tens of thousands of workers that are going to be needed to do this is another challenge. Those are two, but I have to say Urban Green has been at the center of sort of thinking about how you balance the need for change and the challenges.
That wasn't a setup, but I appreciate it. What about resistance? Like, are you seeing resistance? And if you are, how do you think we overcome that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll talk about one example that we're doing in the carbon-free schools. We've been part of a coalition of building trades unions, parents, student groups, and the city to think about how do we come together to talk about how we create good jobs as part of the greening process, create healthier schools, and make it part of the education process of those schools as well. And create safer schools and communities and better air in the schools, get rid of some of the really old boilers. So that process, sort of giving you the positive version of how we build support for this kind of change and growth. I'm going to call out again, NYU does so much education and, through surveys and everything else, engaging the community, engaging our members, and it becomes sort of it builds on itself. So I think that's the positive. I think, again, the fear of the cost and the fear of the change is where we have seen the most resistance. And that's why I think our training fund and the real estate community, to give the real estate community's investment in the training fund, is also about, creating the education, creating those frontline workers who can engage with the tenants and the community to talk about why this is important. Because there are barriers to making all this change. There are costs to making all these change. So we have to talk about why it can be done, how it can be done effectively, is sort of where we've tried to focus our efforts.
Great. And last question, Manny. How are you working to bring new people into the industry? Because we know we need that. Yeah. And then how are you expanding the skill set for what's needed in the future? Yeah.
So if there's any building owners with non-union workers, we can talk later. I think that when we think about, and it is, I mean, we do organize workers, just for the record, that is a key, is we try and bring new workers in, and and New York has a series of things that I think have facilitated that compared to other areas. And I would also say there's an incredible, we were talking about earlier today, a community within New York that respects, how a porter can build their skills, and I think you may hear from some of our members later, build their skills over time to become a resident manager. And part of that process right now is so much about the value that resident manager can provide with the green skills and running the buildings and all the parts that make running a green building so important. So I think that, I think in New York in particular, we sort of, we highlight the value that our members bring through the training, through the investment, through the care they've had in the building. Because our members really do, whether it's a commercial cleaning building, a residential building, or everything else, our members have a deep care about those facilities. They have they build relationship with tenants over years. I mean, decades. We have the average age of our members is well over 50, and that's because people stay in the jobs for decades and build strong relationships. And I think that in essence sells itself to a degree, is people have really seen the value of investing in the workers who then invest back in the buildings. It's it takes resources, it takes focus, it takes care, and a lot of what we try and do is convince people that that's important.
Great. Well, Manny, thank you. Thank you for joining our electrified fireside chat.
That's good. That's good.
Practice what we preach. Thank you for everything you're doing and for your tremendous leadership in the marketplace. Manny, Pastreich, everybody.
Don't make me stand up in here alone. So I'd like to introduce our panelists. Well, okay. I can't wait to see what that's going to be about. Michaela Boren from 32BJ Training Fund, manages the green programs. Marat Olfir, resident manager at the Future Condominium, and Kelly Westby is the managing director of building operations, decarbonization, and efficiency at Stephen Winter Associates. Okay, that's probably the hardest part of the whole day. All right, give me one sec. All right, so the context for this panel, you've heard great speeches from John and from Manny and from Peter. I'm a lot more inspired than I was when I walked in. And I've been doing this work for a very long time. Buildings are now more than ever the front and center for efforts to reduce carbon, but buildings are changing, which means jobs are changing. And the industry is so obviously at an inflection point, we wanted to talk about it today. So first, very quickly, I'm going to ask each of you to just say what it is that you do.
So as the green manager of the 32BJ Training Fund, I make sure that the green classes run smoothly, that I constantly talk to Marat, our members, and our green instructors on what's happening, what they're seeing, doing the research to make sure that we're offering the right courses and the right topics and the right information in these classes, and talking to employers and making sure that we're meeting their needs as well in terms of the green standards.
Good morning. Thank you, everyone. Like Manny mentioned, I'm an immigrant from Ukraine. I came here like 30 years ago. I started at the bottom, porter, and I went all the way up to a resident manager, top of our union in our chain. And I run the building. I manage condominium, 165 apartments, luxury building, and I want to make sure the grade is A and 0 penalty. Thank you.
And I am Kelly. We do a lot of things in the team we call BODE for short, which means to look towards the future. Yeah, bodes well. So we do a lot of different things, but how I like to describe it is we go into buildings and we find issues in buildings. We do some research, potentially with funding from NYSERDA or others, potentially with others in this room, to figure out what the best solutions are to solve those problems. And then we work with policymakers and program implementers to create the right carrots and sticks to move the market. That was a fancy way of saying we're consultants.
Thank you. So I want to first drill down on what Manny said earlier, because I want to hear from each of you. What are the biggest changes that you've seen in building operations over the last 10 years?
In terms of training, first, the tools. If you see our props there, we have 10 years ago or 13 years ago when I first started at 32BJ, the thermal camera was huge. If you see that over there, Kelly, if you don't mind showing, you see that? If it brings good memories to everybody, that was a thermal imaging camera in 2010. And now the thermal imaging camera is something that you attach to your cell phone. Next, there you go, thank you. Next you have the multimeter, that one, yes please. You have that big, gigantic multimeter from quite a long time ago, and you even have the small version from Radio Shack multimeter, if you see it. Oh, there you go. So the small Radio Shack, if you remember, even Radio Shack. There, right? I know, it's fun. So again, that was how many years ago? And then your carbon monoxide detector, or your gas sniffer, so to say, was still a plug-in, right? Compared to something that you just attach to your belt nowadays when you enter a boiler room. So even just from technology itself, you see the difference. And in the training fund side, we had to change the tools. We had to buy more equipment in terms of that. And together with this equipment, thank you, Kelly, are training topics. So in 2010, when New York City started, the first 3 green laws, benchmarking and whatnot, we focused on that. We worked with Urban Green for G-Pro, what do these new rules or laws require our members to do? We even had a portfolio manager training for data, which, we've stopped offering that class. And now, how many years later, we're now using the words decarbonization, electrification, net zero, resiliency. We've never talked about these topics as much or never focused on it. The focus in 2010 was about energy efficiency, water conservation, indoor air quality, was still indoor air quality, and indoor environmental quality was still kind of the concept of that was not there yet. And now everything is about wellness, tying wellness and sustainability together. And now we have more building certifications. So if you guys looked at USGBC's LEED V5 beta for EBOM, you might notice training more centered upon those standards. It's not just in the innovation credit. And 2 weeks ago, USGBC even came out with a white paper connecting operations and maintenance and ESG, something that we've never really done before in 2010. So there's a lot of changes now in terms of definitely for training and all these, we have more than 13 laws now, green laws in New York City. And you have Florida, Boston, who now have requirements in building new buildings towards passive house or LEED standards. And these buildings are going to be existing buildings. So I need Marat and our members to kind of know what that means, because these are soon going to be the level that they'll have to bring their buildings towards. So that there's a huge, I think, opportunity for our members to really do something in the building because of all this coming together. So that's for training.
Thank you so much. So I'm the manager for last 10 years and building, like I mentioned, Future Condominium. And the way I see it, when I took the building, it was actually, like Manny mentioned, I promised the board, give me the job and I'll do my best, to save electricity and water consumption, gas by 20%. So I'm not that close, but I'm close to 15%. I'm very glad. And 10 years ago, as you see, not too much movement was towards, let's electrify the building, let's make it, more greener building. But that's what we, the operators of the building, drive the technology and drive the actual community to make sure, the building is much greener among all other buildings. But lately with the new legislation like Local Law 97, it's a must comply. So I just want to, yeah, thank you so much. So you see, my first grade was D, and the board said there is no way we can get D, in Manhattan, so help me out. And at that time, I asked my management company, I asked everyone, guys, anybody knows who calculates this grade, how it goes? Nobody knows. Michaela, I said, Green School, please help me. So I took first seminar, which came out as soon as it came out. Can you see my next grade? So a little bit better, right? Not still wasn't. So now I'm big, I'm glad, but I say, wait a second, I can do much better, So Michaela, help me out. We got a 6 weeks class, let's do it. So I started taking the class, and so I got an A, And again, I kid you not, management company did not know, could not help, because only school could help me, and see which knowledge we can get, who does it, and which ways, how it works. And then, after that, we get again A, and I know which one. Yes, I was able actually to get my green label for the building, green star, and thank you for 32BJ as well. There is no way I could have get, to that levels without taking all these classes here and driving technology and implementing all the knowledge what I get in the buildings. Even though I'm 87, it's hard to hold this grade, and I'm afraid if my energy level go down, I go back to B. So I'm super, worrying about that one, and that's why we educate our, tenants, residents, and work with the staff. Do you have a question?
We have questions through Slido. I apologize.
Yep.
Can I have this back for 1 second? I forgot to say, we're going to take questions after the panel. If you go to slido.com and enter UGC, you can put your questions in, and we'll ask those questions, because it's just hard to hear questions from the audience. Apologies for the interruption.
So sorry, I'm not gonna tell all the secrets, you know. So that's the whole idea, and so I hope everyone who operates the buildings here, you guys come to school, take the classes, you'll be more available what can and who can help you through your building. And also, I'm kind of a little bit upset that Con Ed offers tremendous amount of money, but they're not here and they're not telling how it's easy to get. I actually was in the Co-op Expo yesterday. I spoke with Con Ed team. None of them knew, you know, that we existed, and nobody came to my building say, "Hey, Marat, let's replace the fence. We give you 25%. Let's replace, you know, the lighting. We give you like $100 per light bulb." So it's amazing, you know, tools for the board, for the owners to know that you don't have to spend 100% from your pocket. Somebody can help you out with that. Thank you.
Amazing. I forgot that I wanted to speak in advance of you, so I didn't have to follow up with that amazing trajectory there. So but I think you point directly towards it, which I think the fundamental shift that we talk about, at least in my side of the industry or component or little small space, is the shift from prescriptive to performance. And so if we are telling everybody we need to fill in a checklist, which checklists are wonderful and very useful, and my background is in commissioning, and so I love checklists. But if we tell people we need to fill in this checklist, then everyone can go around the room and say, well, I did my piece and I checked it off and let's move on. But if we're now saying, okay, but we're actually gonna measure and then we're gonna put a big sign on your building saying when you failed, that's a very different conversation, and that's a different kind of work that we need to do, and we need to do it together. So we can no longer be competitive about it, we have to be collaborative, and I think that theme has come up in my tea break earlier this morning. I spoke to somebody about collaboration. It came up in every single speech that we heard this morning and in the Fireside chat. And I think that's the fundamental shift is it's no longer okay to just, we spent 10 years talking about big goals, but we need to achieve them. And in order to achieve them, we need to work together.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I did not know about the props, and I'm so happy about them. In our speakers call, we talked a lot about things that people generally misunderstood. So very briefly, tell us what are some of the myths that need to be busted?
On the training point of view, especially the culture that we have here at the Training Fund, the myth is telling is teaching. And that's definitely not the case. When you are in a situation and you're addressing the effects of climate change, you have flood in your building, there's extreme weather event, it is that critical situation, those times where you have to be creative and times where you have to think of safety of your equipment, safety of your tenants, your own or building operators' own safety, where the actual skills, the actual hands-on, the collaborative, the previous discussions and whatnot comes into play. And I think that's one of the things that we really focus on here at the Training Fund. Hence, you see the houses on your side. And yes, you are welcome to enter those houses if you want. But the idea that we really make sure that our building operators are ready, and again, telling is not teaching, and the main reason for that is because we want to make sure that they retain that information. The other thing is that technology solves all problems, and that's definitely not the case. Yes, there's an increase in BMS use, and BMS helps you so far, predictive maintenance, preventive maintenance, analysis of data. But again, that creative part, when you have to address something, it tells you when something is wrong, but it does not necessarily tell you how to fix it. And it does not necessarily adjust to the uniqueness of a building because every building is unique. So how do you go about that? So those are the two things for me that is a big myth.
So kind of same with the building operators. many of us did not believe it, that implementing, green techniques, new technology will drive, economy much better. So as you remember, LED lights started like maybe 10 plus years ago. That time was like 24, 20 watts light bulb. But same like our cell phone technology changes every year. I've been dropping wattage. And I remember answer to your Connect question, how I drive, my energy down. So when I installed the light bulbs, maybe like 10 years ago, I replaced all my T8s with LEDs, 20 watts. And we start slowly, down not the entire building, like 10 floors and another 10 floors. And I remember I called my supplier. I said, I would like to get the same 20 watt LED light bulbs. Marat, we don't have them no more. What happened? They're no longer in production. My heart was beeping. I kid you not. I was worrying. I thought maybe, this light bulbs, new technology, get some fire in the buildings, and that's not good. We're going to go back to the old ways. I said, why is they, no longer in production? Oh, they start coming with 18 watts. Great, give me 18 watts. In a few months, I call them again and said, what's now? I said, 16 watts. To make the long story short, I'm now up to 10 watts per light bulb, in my building. So what I'm trying to say, you have to be, in compliance with the latest technology, so you can implement 10 years old technology in your building. If it's VFD, you gotta get to VFD, the latest technology. If the lights, controls, anything else, BMS, it has to be the latest technology. And some, building operators think, oh yes, I have the VFD. How old is your pump? 20 years old. Oh, well, technology changed, so if you update with the newer technology, you can get actually rebates from ConEd, and it's going to be much easier for you to operate the building and less energy for the entire community.
So I think this connects to what both of you were saying, and it's a little awkward to admit. I think one of the myths is that energy audits save energy. It's not actually true, right? Because we take the time and the computer energy to craft them, to run the energy model. Then we print out them on paper, and then we do a big presentation. And if they go on the shelf, then zero energy has been saved and zero carbon has been reduced. And so I think there's a big myth that we like to believe in, and is that energy consultants save energy, but really building operators save energy. And there's nothing that we can do if we don't partner together. So I think that's one critical thing. And then I think the same thing goes for, a BMS, a CT, a energy meter. An energy meter does not save energy. In fact, it doesn't even pretend that it's going to save energy. It's just going to measure the energy, monitor it. If it's working properly, if it's been installed properly, and if someone's watching it, I guess, is an energy meter metering energy if no one's watching it? I'm not sure. That's a debate for another day. But I think so much equipment, there is so much embodied carbon in the plastic tools that we have put in our buildings that are not being used to actually save energy. And I think we need to think critically about what we're doing moving forward.
Okay, so to summarize, it's not all about technology. It's about technology, and it's about how we implement the technology. Yep. Okay, fantastic. So some of you have already given us some questions on Slido. Thank you. Just a reminder, go to slido.com. The code is UGC, and you can vote up other people's questions, and we generally take the top questions. Okay, so then my next question is, aside from technical skills, what are the new soft skills that people need working in building operations? And we can go in a different order if we would like.
So I would say soft skills like know how you sell the product and educate your unit owners, shareholders, on the board, what can we do for the building? And I absolutely agree with you. Just small thing like reading meters on a weekly basis and see what's going on. So in my building, we read all the meters, electrical, gas, water, on a weekly basis every Tuesday, 8 o'clock in the morning. So I'm going to make sure all data I put in my spreadsheet, and I know as soon as I see the water consumption, raises up, right away I ring the bell, I ask my management, send the email to all the unit owners and say, hey team, that's what we have. Probably one of the toilets leaking, maybe somebody went on vacation and something is wrong. Let me, check it right away before we'll wait, 3 months when DEP gonna give us a bill, and then suddenly we got like $50,000 increase. So with that, I took from school, you increase water consumption, you increase energy consumption, your pump's working harder, you pay so much, sewer and all these bills. So that's goes, with everyone. I'm not just by myself running the building. I depend a lot, on my unit owners, on the tenants, see how they operate, how they know what needs to be done. And just small education, just sending them memos, reminders, or even I make small video for my unit owners how to clean the filters, because we're condominium, we don't do maintenance inside the apartments. We just educate the owners, and always available 24/7. I can help you as long as I know you're gonna drive electricity down in your apartment, you're gonna help my building.
Kelly?
Oh, sorry.
I'm going to change the question a little. So I don't think they're new. In fact, I have this book on my phone called How to Win Friends and Influence People from like a very long time ago. I think the other thing is, I think we need to rebrand the term soft. I'm an engineer. I like hard facts and figures. Like I think, the hard data, the concrete, this is a steel building. Like the kinds of folks that are attracted to our industry are attracted to solid things, I think. And so then we assume that soft skills are less important. And so I would like to rebrand them as human science. So we have building science and we have human science. And human science is just as critical, and maybe more so, than building science. And I would say if we go into a boiler room, I'm going to tee it up. It's always funnier when you try to say it's a joke in the beginning. Okay. So I ran this one by my accountant fiance, and he didn't think it was as funny. Anyway. So you go into a boiler room and there's water all over the floor, and you see a little bit of dribble from the pressure relief valve, and you think, damn you, pressure relief valve, you should hold the water inside. And that doesn't really work. But for some reason, when we go into the office and someone's stressed out and they haven't finished the work that we've assigned to them, we think, well, we got to fire that guy. Or maybe we could have a collaborative conversation with them about how we can get all the work done together. And so I think that's my rebranding is that I think the engineering skills or building operator skills are just as soft, and the human science skills are just as hard. And I think that the most important skill that we can all develop is how to be a little bit more patient with the people that we're talking to. And really try to listen for what's not being said and control our own emotional response to what is being said.
I should have gone after Marat. Yeah. So if you have our catalog with you, the red one, right? We've got it up, yeah. We have it here. One of the things that you'll see at the beginning of the pages is called career tracks. All right, and again, from 2010 to now, these career tracks have changed throughout the years. And one of the things that human science that we are now seeing that we feel is needed is, as Marat said, one is persuasive and public speaking. Most of our building operators now are slowly being part of board meetings. They're now part of the planning process, your operating cost, and even, discussions about capital investments in the building. So they need to feel comfortable because now they're already at the table with the board. The second thing that we've noticed is computer skills. In order to send communication to all your tenants in the building, it has to go through email. If you have a system in the building that monitors packages, it does go through a computer system. And these are simple things. And again, if your building ends up with a BMS at some point, right, there's, again, a part of the computer skills that you need for that. I think the other soft skills that we were talking about, human science skills that we were talking about too, is I think we have a disaster preparedness class, disaster preparedness and mitigation, and to be able to think on, immediately right then and there and what's going on, and immediately think of the whole building approach if there's an emergency, and knowing that one action that you take might affect everything else, and it might be a good idea just focusing on that topic, but it might not be a good idea for all the other parts of the building, is one of the things that we want to make sure that our building operators are in a good condition to think about. Yeah.
So we're going to switch to your questions. My last question was going to be a lightning round. What would success look like for future building operators? But you guys already totally nailed that question. All right. So the top question here is, how can building management better recognize and reward building operators for their energy saving efforts to incentivize greater improvements? So Marat, should we start with you?
Yeah. So actually I want to say back to that, safety relief valve. I would say operation maintenance is a must. Before that safety relief valve will start dripping, I'm going to say, hey, Marat, you didn't clean me for like 2 years. Dude, you got to do maintenance every year. And also, like, you didn't replace the gasket for the last 3 years, I can hold a few more weeks, but guess what? On the weekend, I'm going to start dripping, and God forbid I open, I'm going to flood the entire lobby. So what I'm trying to say, many operator maintenance, forgetting about the important maintenance, how it needs to be done, have his own checklist, because mainly like these small items can create disaster, and then you're in trouble. So I'm trying to say everything should be maintained the way it was designed by the commission, stuff like that. And that's very important. And back to actually my boss, Michaela, it's absolutely right. Our union have class how to run building with computers. And before I was afraid how I can communicate with the entire board, or with the entire property management, or with the entire, building in one email through my cell phone. But that's, obstacle was very overcome by taking the class, and I feel comfortable because we have all the software and you can get training, with all of them. And I'm so sorry, what was the question now? I was thinking.
I have a thought to
Yes.
add to that. I think to circle us back to the question, perhaps, maybe. I think one thing that sounds like you feel valued when you're able to spend time in those classes learning new things, which I think is so critical. We all want to be learning and growing. We also all want to feel good about the value that we're bringing to the organization. I do too. I love it when my boss says, "Good job, Kelly." Like, it's so easy and simple, and it doesn't have to be a complicated, like, matrix situation of a bonus structure that has, like, an algorithm to it. It can just be, I can't believe, like, this class sounds so great. Wow, you got an A. That's awesome. And connecting with people on a human level to show the importance of what they're doing every day, to show the importance of education, taking time out from his day to participate in these kinds of things. Money is nice, too.
All right. As moderator's prerogative, I'm going to take off my moderator hat, and I'm on the board of my co-op. And I also run GPro at work. So in both cases, when the building operators are part of the goal setting and to determine what the building's trying to do, and together they figure out what the solutions are, it makes all the difference in the world. And so Urban Green offers a program called GPro at Work, which you're actually going to hear a little bit about in a few minutes. It's like a coaching program, and to qualify, our only requirement for that, we have two requirements. One is that the team is enthusiastic about energy efficiency, because we can't fix that. And the other is that there are people from all levels of the organization that are willing to participate. So it's not just the operators, there's only so much operators can do. So when management is interested and they're requiring these efficiency upgrades and putting aside money or saving money or working with Con Ed to come up with a plan to, use incentives to fund the next round of efficiency, but when the operator is part of the decision making, I think that's one of the biggest things. Okay.
So I'm going to share what the 32 BJ members have shared with me that they have appreciated from their supervisors and for their boards. One of the things is they have shared their appreciation when their supervisors send them to training during company hours, right? Because it shows that they support you, and they want you to grow. That's one. Number two, one of our employers, MBD, they have a policy of hiring from within, right? And the president actually brought 50 of his 32 union members, 32 BJ union members to our Monroe Bronx training location to show them how close it is, to show them these are the courses and these are the courses that we want you to take and to do. So showing that. Number 3, one experience that was pretty funny was how one of our members earned their Lead Green Associate certification. And this was, I think a Douglas Elliman building. And their supervisor gave them, a bonus and announced it to the whole building that, hey, our building operator got a new certification. And to him, for those of you who have taken the LEED exam, you know how challenging it can be. And so for that acknowledgement to be shown and to be able for them to show their certificates on the wall in their office or let the tenants know that they've now become a green resource in their building means a lot to them. And so those are the things that that I normally hear from our members. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so Marat, this question is for you.
Yes, please.
How did you get from a D to an A? And why are you so concerned about losing your A, and what is out of your control?
Thank you so much. So how I went from D to an A, hard work. We started with LED lights and then everything else. So if the city tells you the hot water in the apartment should be 120, so I want to make sure that hot water leaves my boiler 121, so I get to 120. Before it was 125. 5 degrees, not a big deal, but if you use less energy, if you use less, gas, so it works out. Same, many buildings in New York, they have roof tanks. I don't have roof tanks. I'm direct feed from the city, and I have, VFD pumps. So I control the pressure in the building. If you do the calculations, thank you for the engineering skills. So you know how much you need to bring, to the upper floors, as long as in there within, and no complaints. So I was able to bring like 7 pounds less. Again, less energy, less everything else. I was fortunate enough that my board president owned 6 businesses, and he is like businessman number 1. So when we start upgrading our HVAC on the rooftop, I said, Marat, I want to get, Ford, Cadillac, Rolls Royce. Give me all the prices. Wow, this, I never get, challenge like that. So when they're asking, the vendors, guys, I want the most energy efficient equipment, a regular one, and the cheapest one. So I was actually shocked when the board actually approved, the most energy efficiency. So Marat, going forward, everything gonna be like top of the line. Say no more. That comes out in the back to our Con Ed. I said, yes, I can spend $3,000 in the fan, roof fan exhaust, but if Con Ed pays $1,500, why not? Bring them to the building and tell the board, guys, instead of saving, instead of saving nothing, I can actually get something, to the building. And slowly we start getting, all this upgrade. So what I'm trying to say, if you're doing upgrade, it must be in a contract when I'm getting, all the prices, the latest energy saving equipment. I do not want a regular fan. I want the most energy saving fan. I don't want regular, pumps and boilers. I want the most energy saving. And today's market must be in a contract. I don't want verbally, because I'm gonna go after the contractors. And the small upgrades and maintenance with actually what we did in the building. And also back to the, engineering skills. When I got the ASHRAE level 2 audit in my building, so I got the PI, and I see how much and what needs to be done. I was actually shocked when I find out that 40% of my total building electricity is used by commercial tenants. So that's my challenge. I cannot control that much commercial tenants. It's like big chain supermarket, which they mainly worrying about, pleasing their customers and selling, produce. It's hard to tell them, guys, you gotta cut few, degrees and you gotta do something else. So that's our challenge now, getting commercial tenants, to the pace of the residential buildings.
I just want to point out one thing. Marat just made a throwaway comment like, oh, when I check my energy every Tuesday morning at 8 o'clock. That is not what everybody does. So I think that's also a huge driver of your efficiency, in my opinion. I've never seen your building. Okay, so the next question is, so what kind of training is most needed for the workforce over the next 5 years? So we're in 2023, the first local compliance year is 24, and then 30. So what the next few years, what kind of training do you guys think is most important? Do you want to start with?
Okay. So for us at 32BJ, with Local Law 97 and decarbonization in mind, we will continue with our operations and maintenance training, but towards that goal. Again, the best way to start electrification in your building or to start those steps is to make sure that your building is as energy efficient as possible before you start doing those capital investments. So ever since the beginning, again, good operations and maintenance will still save your building between 5% to 20% in cost and in energy. And so we continue on with that, but now we have a different perspective in mind. The other things that we are planning on improving on, or I guess the evolution of it now, is heat pumps, right? That is definitely a big thing. That also includes renovations, right? How to manage renovations in your building, with people bringing in electric vehicles now in the parking. Granted, our building operators are not the ones doing that installation, but they still have to make sure that it's done right, that everything is safe, that the contractors fulfill their end of the contract, that making sure that it's working well, and if there's a green light that is changing into red and they know to call the contractor if that happens, they need to know that. So, and then the third thing would be resiliency. So right now, New York City has a standard for new buildings on resiliency. Our next project for green is how do you translate that information to existing buildings? So what new ideas can we get from resilient designs that our building operators can install or kind of make a tweak so that it's applicable to existing buildings? So that's where
I would say the more training the building operators can get from this building, it's better for everyone. So I spent like 3 years in actually this building to earn my refrigeration license, operating license. And I kid you not, before I was afraid to like hose down the air conditioner, window air conditioner, because I was thinking I'm gonna damage something. I said, no, Marat, this is for outside, the easiest maintenance, hose it down on an annual basis, and you're gonna save like 10-15% operating costs. I said, wow, that's easy to do. But again, it took me like 3 years to be that confident that I can remove somebody's HVAC unit and clean it. Same with everything else, with the lighting. We have awesome, class, advanced lighting. It's 2 days, not that long taking. It's probably 3 or 4 seminars during the year, but it took me to the next level. So we have staircase lights. Why don't we put the sensor? You can call electricians. They charge you arm and a leg, or you can do it with in-house labor, with your handyman, or even with a porter who can hold you this light fixture. So what I'm trying to say, the more knowledge, the more skills you can get in this building, so it's going to be better for any building owners. And I would think, since you mentioned about career track, I actually earned, diploma superintendent. I actually earned diploma from this union and resident manager too. I wish, it would be some credential when supers get the job, said, did you get appropriate training? Or maybe you should get this training within 6 months. So at least you'll know how you can drive that building to that A-class grade.
It's hard for me to follow that. There was a lot of great trainings that I think will be available in the next 5 years. So thank you for putting those together, promising to put them together here today. I then want to give a shout out for some communication training that I think needs to go hand in hand with all of that, because I think as we move, I think there is some amount of urgency, right, in transitioning. I think we saw the chart of how much work needs to be done, and very, very soon. And I think when we see something that quick, we get the sense that we need to run fast. We should just run faster. And I think it's a little counterintuitive, but I think we actually need to slow down. We need to communicate. We need to figure out what the real problems are. When I was talking to some of the staff on the team yesterday about how building operators have been helpful, they were like, well, they know about all the secret steam lines, where the secret steam lines live, or the secret fans that you can only get to with like a secret ladder that lives on that other roof. And if we're not finding the secret steam pipes, then we won't be retrofitting properly. And so I think we need to slow down to speed up, or however we want to say it.
And to add to that too, I think one of the reasons why Local Law 97 seems so daunting to everybody is because for those of us who's been in this industry for quite a while, you'll notice that in 1 year, the laws change. In 1 year, there's rebates. The next year or a few years, there's new technology. It's always in phases. It's always in a silo of this part of the building industry, that part of the industry. For the first time, ever since we've all of us who have advocated for opportunity, for energy efficiency, for more funding, it's all happening at the same time, right? Now you have funding, now you have the laws, now you have the technology, now so many people are talking to each other, and now you're like, where do I start, right? And so now more than ever, as Kelly said, we really, really have to talk to each other. We can't just say, that the design will take care of that, the engineering, the building part will take care of the installation, will take care of that, the waste part will take care of that. We really have to connect everything if we want to reach, and fulfill the requirements for Local Law 97 and what it really means for everybody. And so that's why I say, one of the things that you'll notice if you register for an event, they ask you for your titles, right? Or what part of the building industry that you're in. You'll notice that operations and maintenance is not really mentioned, right? It's only now through these recent years or recent events that now they consider operations and maintenance now as part of the whole. And so that's one of the things that you really, I encourage everybody to really communicate with your building operators because they're the eyes and ears of the building. And so I think that's where it is, that we can't, like even the chart that was shown earlier, it was divided by cost and it was divided by measures. It wasn't divided by role, right?
Well, that is going to end this panel discussion. That was fantastic. Thank you so much. That's it. You guys can take your seats. So we're almost done. We have one more announcement for you. So since we have such an amazing group of operators and building owners and training folks here, NYSERDA asked us to make an announcement about a new opportunity notice that they have, PON 5357, Building Operations and Maintenance Training Program. And the point of it is to improve skills of O&M staff and reduce energy and carbon emissions, obviously, if that wasn't already obvious. So it provides funding for development and delivery of customized training that meets the needs of a specific building. So the NYSERDA requirement is that the building has at least $1 million or more of energy expenditure a year, and funding is available up to about $500,000 per project. So a little shameless plug for GPro at Work. The previous PON that NYSERDA had, Urban Green did about 6 projects or so with different institutional teams, and it was, in the project, everyone takes GPro O&M.
NYU participated in one too.
Oh, okay. Actually, raise your hand if you've participated in one of these. Okay, so I don't have to tell you that much. I'm going to tell NYSERDA the announcement was given. Everyone knows what it is. We're in good shape. So the link is over here with all the information about training partners and what's funded. Okay, so I'm turning it back over to John, and while he's coming up here, I just want to give a huge thank you to Linda and Michaela and Anushka for helping us with this fantastic event.
Great. Thank you. Thank you to Ellen. Thank you to the tremendous panel. I mean, I think this by far is my favorite Urban Green event of the year. And so congratulations to the amazing discussion on the panel. Let's give another big round of applause to the panelists. I also want to thank Manny and 32BJ and the 32BJ Training Fund for hosting us in this very inspirational space that I think helped us have the great conversation we did today. I want to thank our friends at Con Ed for their longstanding support of Urban Green, but also for this particular event. And of course, I want to thank U.S. Green Building Council for their partnership as a partner on the discussion that we had today. My last thing is we have some cool, we're winding down the year like everybody else, and we have some very cool events still, both on December 6th, so easy to remember. We're going to do a great online program with Arup on a new study they are releasing that quantifies, for the first time that I've ever seen, the carbon benefits for converting office spaces to residential space. It's always been a question out there. There's always been a lot of theories about what it could be or not be, but they've done a tremendous job modeling what that would be for all the eligible buildings in New York City. So tune in to that program online on December 6th at 10 a.m. And then we're going to end the year with a bang with our holiday member reception at December 6th, 6 to 8 p.m. at the Fisher and Paykel Experience Center with their private chefs who are very good. So I hope you can join us for that event too. So thank you again. Tremendous for having you here and being part of the rich discussion. And we wish you well. And if we don't see you, enjoy a great Thanksgiving and the end of the year. Thank you.